Good morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name is Ross, and as always told, How to Voice Radio. So today, I am taking a look at an old deck that I am willing to say might be literally my least favourite deck ever. It's Durant. Now, this came about in the Noble Victories expansion. It is still legal in the expanded format, though it's not good at the moment. Ladies and gentlemen, I despise Durant. Now, it was all based around the basic Durant Pokémon. For 1 Metal Energy, Devour. For each of your Durant in play, discard the top card of your opponent's deck. So the theory here was incredibly simple. Get 4 Durant in play, and then for 1 energy, just discard 4 cards off the top of your opponent's deck every single turn, sitting there laughing maniacally while you do it. It drove me crazy. The thing is, it was actually a really good deck, and there was a Cities format especially where it was arguably, very strongly arguably, the best deck at the time. Now, it wasn't good enough on its own because it didn't do any damage. You need to buy yourself a little bit of time, and the main way people did this was using hammers. Now, at the time we had Crushing Hammer, but instead of Enhanced Hammer, players would use Lost Remover. Lost Remover was the same as Enhanced Hammer, with one key difference. It put special energy into the lost zone from which things could never be recovered, rather than the discard pile, although to be fair at the time we didn't really have any good ways of recovering special energy anyway. You would then use cards like Pokemon Catcher. Now, this was pre-errata Pokemon Catcher, so you could just drag a Pokemon into the active whenever you felt like it, and there was no downside for doing so. None of this flip a coin malarkey. And then you would use Junk Arm, one of the most ludicrously overpowered cards we've ever been given. It was basically Dowsing Machine, but it was only for items. And you could play 4 in your deck. So reusing these Crushing Hammers, Enhanced Hammers, Pokemon Catchers, etc. was really not a particularly difficult thing, given that you could use Junk Arm to reuse them. Now, the other key part of the deck was Rotom from Undaunted. The Poker Power, think ability, said that once per turn you can switch one of your face-down prize cards with a top card of your deck. Now, this was really important because Durant discarded 1 card from the top of your opponent's deck for every Durant that you had in play. So if you had, for instance, 3 Durant in play rather than 4, that made a big difference, because every turn you were discarding 1 less card from the top of your opponent's deck, and this really added up over time. You couldn't afford to have any Durant prized. You really needed to get them out as soon as you possibly could. That's where Rotom came in. And you might be thinking, well, hang on a second, Ross. What are the odds that you're going to hit the exact card in your prizes that happens to be a Durant? Good. Because we had the Alf lithograph from Triumphant, which says, look at all of your face-down prize cards. So as soon as you draw into and use that, you then should know what all of your prizes are, and then you can know which Durant it is. Crucially, unlike Town Map, you don't turn them up, you just look at them, which means they're still face down, but you know which ones are where, and then you get to use Rotom's ability, and out comes the Durant. Very nice indeed. And that really was the main part of the deck. You want 4 Durant in play, and you want to just be discarding 4 cards off the top of your opponent's deck. It wasn't a deck that revolved around attacking, although there were some options, more on that in a moment. The key was just to deck your opponent out of cards. And ladies and gentlemen, there were a couple of times I actually saw somebody win a sudden death game with Durant, decking out their opponent before their opponent drew a prize. 20-minute sudden death games, not fun. Now, there were some key trainer cards we needed for this deck. First up, Pokemon Collector, a card that if it saw a reprint would instantly go into every deck. Pokemon Collector was a ludicrously overpowered card, which allowed you to grab 3 basic Pokemon from your deck and put them into your hand. Think kind of like Bridget, except they go into your hand, they don't go into your deck. Ludicrously overpowered. So you would use this to search for free Durant, and off you go. Twins allowed you to search for any 2 cards in your deck as long as you were behind on prizes at the time. Given that you were playing a deck that didn't take prizes and was therefore almost always behind on prizes, Twins basically just read search your deck for any 2 cards. It was great. Pokégear 3.0 is not a particularly widely played card, but you needed your Twins, ladies and gentlemen, and Pokégear 3.0 was the way you went and got it. Pokégear 3.0 said, look at the top 7 cards of your deck, choose a supporter card you find there, and put it into your hand. Just a nice way to find your Twins, and like I've said, in a deck that doesn't take prizes, where you're basically relying on being behind for the entire game, Twins just becomes way too good. Eviolite is an older version of Hard Charm. The big difference with Eviolite was that it only worked on basic Pokemon. Well, the good news is you're playing Durant. Durant's a basic Pokemon. Life is good. Gave you a little bit of extra bulk, ladies and gentlemen. Meant that attacks reduced damage by 20. That was good, because you're playing these little 70 HP Durant, putting them up to an effective HP of 90 really was very useful indeed. And of course, Revive is always a good idea, because it wasn't just getting out your Durant that was important. It was making sure that you kept your Durant out. Revive puts a basic Pokemon from your discard pile onto your bench, and Revive was good here. Durant gets KO'd, play a Revive, you are ready to go. The other thing you had here was Rescue Energy. Rescue Energy was a special energy that we just don't see very often now. But essentially, if Durant was knocked out by damage from an attack, not an ability, not poison, etc., you put it straight back into your hand. None of this goes to the discard pile rubbish. It went back into your hand, so that at the beginning of your turn it was in your hand and you could just bench it and you had 4 Durant again. I cannot stress, ladies and gentlemen, how important it was to continually have 4 Durants in play. If you didn't have 4 Durants in play, you'd probably end up losing. The other special energy you really liked here was Special Metal Energy, just because it reduced damage done by 10. So, of course, a Durant with a special metal and with an Eviolite would mean that every time you took an attack, you would only actually take 30 damage less than your opponent was trying to do. And that was extremely important when you've got these Pokemon that, quite frankly, are a little bit fragile. The other card that this deck played was a very uncommonly used card, which was actually a promotional stadium that was only available as a promo card. It was Battle City. Battle City said, once during each player's turn, that player may flip a coin. If heads, they draw a card. But in something like Durant, that extra card, getting that extra Durant makes all the difference. Getting that Lost Remover at the right time makes all the difference. You had to stop your opponent setting up. And let's face it, yes, you gave your opponent a chance to draw a card, but in theory you were discarding 4 cards as well. So it didn't matter if they drew an extra card, they shouldn't have been setting up. Now, primarily this deck really was just discarding with Durant, but there were some other attackers that were used. The main one of which was Cobalion from Noble Victories for the attack Energy Press. 20 damage, plus 20 more for each energy attached to the defending Pokemon. What players would often do against a deck like Durant is just pile a whole bunch of energy on the same Pokemon, with the theory that if you can't get too many Crushing Hammers, then even if you hit 1 or 2, they've got so much energy on there it's not going to make a big difference, and in theory that's right. So if they do get 4 or 5 energy on a Pokemon, they've got 1 attacker, Energy Press comes in, takes them out, and they've used all their resources on 1 attacker, they are gone. Of course, what a lot of players would do is actually use Prism Energy, kind of like Rainbow Energy, but only for basic Pokemon, and you didn't have to take a damage counter, so that they could attack with Rotom. 1 Lightning Energy, or Prism Energy, 20 damage, for each energy attached to that Pokemon. And you could do it when they were on the bench. So if they were building up energy on the bench, you could hit them with Rotom. And it might seem like, hang on a second, isn't that basically what Cobalion does? Yes. It's actually 20 less, but we'll take it. Because, like I say, the main thing that a lot of players would do against Durant is build up all of their energy on one Pokemon so they could smash and you couldn't crushing hammer the energy fast enough. Rotom and Cobalion stopped that. And Black Belt even saw a little bit of play in this deck. Black Belt being a supporter card that just did an extra 40 damage if you're behind on prizes, just like I said with Twins. This is a deck which is basically always behind on prizes, so if you weren't doing quite enough damage with your Cobalion or your Rotom, Black Belt would come in and make sure that you in fact were. Take out their only attacker, and then you win the game. This deck was supposed to be stopped when Heatmore came out, which was a Pokemon that really seemed built to beat Durant. And I mean like really seriously supposed to beat Durant. The attack was for a colourless energy, so it could be put in any deck whatsoever, and it literally did 10 damage. If the defending Pokemon is Durant, this attack does 50 more, and you're hitting for weakness. Everybody went, right, everyone's going to put Heatmore in their deck and then Durant is gone. It was actually Darkrai. Darkrai decks could use Yveltal eventually, and they had Dark Patch to accelerate energy, and the ability gave all your Pokemon free retreat so you couldn't be stranded in the active by a Pokemon catcher, and it was this combination of energy acceleration, hitting the bench, and lack of being able to be stranded that basically said, sorry Durant, your time is over. And I was delighted because I hated Durant. But as always, let me know what you think. Post your Durant-related memories in the comment section, ladies and gentlemen. Go nuts! Be nice. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at @TheWassy, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts, etc., you can do so at patreon.com/PTCGRadio. But by far the most important thing, as always, is to look after yourselves until next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.